I'm not seeing it showing up yet. Okay. Great. All right. Well, hello everyone who's joining us. My name is Aredvi from the HEAL Project. And today we have our third session from our 4-part series on cyber fucking while distancing coming to you. And we are so excited. I feel like we are finally past the introductory sessions and gonna get into some really exciting stuff.
Yes. I'm so excited too. I'm even more excited for the next session. Yes, but sad that it's going to be our last. Yes.
Yes.
I am Ignacio. I am the founder of the HEAL Project and the director. And we have been so happy to be bringing this series to you, especially while this is going on. I mean, particularly because this is going on. And that so many people have been interested in this, and we hope to be bringing more to you. Thank you all for your support.
Yes, and yes, you can join us on YouTube. And just so you know, when it's time for Q&A, you can post on the YouTube chat section, and I will be looking at that. So please send us your questions. And if you haven't already, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe there, and go to our website, our Instagram, social media. We are heal2end.org, HEAL number 2 END.org. And we right now have a community coaching survey that we are promoting. I would love to get your feedback on how we can offer community coaching sessions. And I think having done some of these Q&As as part of these webinar series is telling me that this would be a really great event to just focus on a lot of questions that are coming up for folks in general and during these times. And thank you so much for everybody who has donated to the HEAL Project. If you haven't, please donate $20 a session or $60 for all of the sessions. It would be great help.
And we also have a resource packet at the end of this in every session. We have a really good one actually for this session. I'm going to have an even better one for the next session. Doing the resource packages have been great. I've got some good movies set aside for folks. So be sure to check those out. And if you have anything that you want to add to the resource package, please let us know.
Yes, I am very excited about that resource packages too. So to get started today, we're actually gonna kind of start backwards. We're gonna start with fantasy, and then from that go into digital role play, and then finally discuss anonymity and familiarity and how the two of them kind of stand opposite each other, right? And I think the reason for that is because I always consider fantasy as the first place where curiosity and desire kind of manifests, right? It's for a lot of us, fantasies, we can trace them back to our childhood, to our first thoughts and dreams and fantasies we had about a lot of things, but many of them sexual, erotic, romantic in nature. So yeah, and then some of them become reality. Some of them is impossible to make reality. And there is really a whole world to explore there. But starting with fantasy, what is fantasy and what do they tell us? I think about this from different angles. One is about the conscious versus subconscious mind. Is there are fantasies that come from our subconscious, like our dreams do, that may surprise us, shock us, and there's some that are more coming from the conscious mind, may not surprise us, but also can inform us of where our head is at in case we're not paying attention. What do you think, Ignacio, about
Yeah.
fantasies and where they come from?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think about them in terms of like sometimes we get bogged down by them because sometimes those things tell us a little something about ourselves, and sometimes it's pieces of what's going on in the world, right? We oftentimes think, is this healthy or unhealthy question mark? You know, is this bad or good? Am I a good person or bad person? Is this what I really want? Yeah, what does it say about me? And sometimes it's wrapped up in trauma, insecurity, a lot of things. So it's not always as clear cut as it may seem, right? So fantasies could be a mosh posh of lots of things, you know. So they can be confusing and they can be very exciting. But fantasies, even though they can be confusing, I think they're they're something to be played with and dabbled with, right? Because there are imagination. And that's what I like about it, that they're ours. That's the beauty of
Mhm.
fantasy, you know?
Absolutely. And there's that notion of just privacy of thought. And that's something that,
Right.
um, even if we're feeling guilty or shameful about our thoughts and fantasies, they're still our thoughts and fantasies. And I feel like we were saying, they're yours. You don't have to share them with anyone. You're absolutely entitled to having them, first of all, and keep having them and never sharing them with anyone. But also, you can choose to share them for
Mhm.
various reasons. You know, if you think it's a fantasy that maybe is not, it's in the unhealthy category, you may want to share that with a therapist or with a partner or
Right, right.
someone you trust, right? And if it's something that you consider healthy, you can share it for fun. You can share it to
Can you
expand it.
stop for a sec? We have
Yes.
a lag in,
I think we lost Rodney.
you know, okay. So we're
Great.
gonna,
Should I repeat the last part or?
yes.
So the last part, we were talking about how unhealthy fantasies can be something that you can share with someone trusted, like a therapist or a partner or a friend. And healthy fantasies is also something you can choose, again, to share with a partner, with a friend, just as something to maybe bring into reality, or just share and see what other people think, what kind of feedback you get from them.
Hmm. Yeah. It's sometimes it's this question of healthy, unhealthy, and stuff. We go back and forth about what that is. We get a lot of messages about that. You
Yeah.
know, I give this workshop about um, rape play fantasies for feminists. You know,
Mm.
because people who have these fantasies about rape play often think, "Oh my goodness, what is wrong with me?" You know, I'm a feminist, and I often fantasize about these things. I'm a horrible feminist. I can never tell anyone that I have these fantasies because and so you have to think about this. Do I want this to happen in real life? Absolutely not. This is about power play, and because we're human beings, we tap into what we see every day, what we're connected to. That's how our subconscious works as well. When we go to sleep, we grab onto things in the news, things, and it taps into our dreams, and that's what we do, right? So we tap into those things, and that's how it comes out. And that's how we play with power. We fuck with power. All right.
Right.
And so the healthy, unhealthy, it's about, and this is where the negotiation and consent comes in when we're thinking about these things. Sometimes that's why they stay in our heads, because we just fuck with that in our minds. And then sometimes we think about them in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting with the example of rape play. Um, or rape fantasies, it's a very common fantasy, first
Yeah.
of all. It's something people rarely would admit. And there is that notion that if you have rape fantasies or if you are into rape play, you must have personally experienced rape, or you just are so traumatized, or, there's a lot of assumptions that
Right.
come with being open about your fantasies. And it's interesting because personally, I had rape fantasies and was into rape play before I was raped, and I
Mm.
was into them after.
Right.
So and again, everybody has a different story.
Right.
But it's also, just because you have a fantasy doesn't mean you desire it, first of all. Fantasy and
Exactly.
desire are different. And just because you have a fantasy, you're not responding to something that directly happened to you. I mean, do I have rape fantasies because we live in rape culture? Absolutely.
I'm gonna slow down a little bit.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah, we're getting heated here. It's true.
All right.
You got that. Yeah, but you make a point, right? When we have fantasies, it doesn't mean that we actually desire those things. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then talking about fantasies and sharing them with partners, right?
Mm,
Um,
yes.
that can be really vulnerable
Hmm.
for a lot of people.
Yes.
Um, Sometimes I think we were having a conversation about, when a lot of times having partnered sex may need to be augmented with fantasies for extra excitement, extra pleasure.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like there's a lot of guilt that comes with that. Um, there
Yes.
is, yeah.
I think that it's interesting because as a sex educator, I've had many people come to me to say that their partners get very upset when they find out that one, they masturbate without them masturbate after they have sex with them, or that they fantasize about something else when they're having sex with them, or fantasize about something else altogether when they masturbate not with them. It's very interesting to
Hmm.
me. It's very interesting to me because it's like when you're in a relationship, it's like you only should think about that person, which is really odd to me. To me, because to me, everybody has their thing. So it's this idea that you cannot fantasize, and it's interesting because it's like your brain is yours, right? You should be able to fantasize about what you want, and what makes you hot and excited should be what is in your reach, right? uh, and so it's that, I think you asked before, should you tell your partner if you are thinking about one thing while they're going down on you? Should you? And if they ask you, were you thinking about me? Would you tell them that you were thinking about something else? you know, is that an ethical question about fantasy? Like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking about something else because it's not like they're deficient. So I think people take it as a deficiency, fantasy, inserting fantasy as a deficiency in a partner. I think it enhances the the interaction, or you know that act. I think people just get very yeah, they get very touchy about that, like I'm not enough or something.
It's a sensitive subject,
Yeah.
and it's interesting that I've looked into some studies around it. Um, Anonymous surveys show that something like 85% of partnered people have fantasized about somebody else besides their partners while they've been together. That's a lot of people. That's most people.
Mm.
Doesn't surprise me. Again, it's not shocking at all. But if it wasn't anonymous, how many people would actually admit that yes, they do have sexual desires, fantasies, and ways of sexually expressing themselves that doesn't involve their partner,
Right.
right?
Right.
I see that as kind of a normal part of human sexuality,
Right.
but it's really taboo, and especially doing that while you're having sex with a partner, that is extra taboo, right?
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
would add that I'm on the same page as you. I'd say privacy of thought. You don't owe anyone an explanation of what goes on in your head. Um, and you absolutely are entitled to what you share or not. If you're asking a partner if they were thinking about you or not, be prepared to take an honest answer.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
don't ask. If the only acceptable answer is that you want to hear you, just don't ask. And I would also add that if you are someone who frequently fantasizes about other people or fantasizes about other situations while having sex with a partner, consider the possibility that maybe the sex you're having with that partner isn't working for you. Because fantasy can sometimes be used as a way of disconnecting from ourselves and escaping what is happening. So, again, not putting a value judgment on it,
Mm.
but observing why you are fantasizing. Is this fantasy enhancing your already awesome time with your partner? Or are there things going on here that you actually just don't want to deal with, don't want to talk to the partner, don't want to face, and you're just using fantasy to avoid solving a problem?
Mm. And I'll add another spin to that actually. That for me in particular, there's a particular sex act for me that is very difficult. And because it's connected to my child sexual abuse.
Mm.
And so when I am receiving this particular sex act, I have to fantasize. I enjoy it, but I have to fantasize. It's almost a part disassociation, part fantasy type thing that I have to do because
Mhm.
I want to enjoy this. I do not want my perpetrator to take this away from me. So it is an act of rebellion, and it is like I have to do this. So I am not thinking about the partner. I'm not like thinking about that moment, but I'm thinking about that particular part of my body, and I'm
Mhm.
connecting with that part of my body so that
Mhm.
I can feel that in a particular way. So I'm fantasizing about something, about a particular person,
Mhm.
more about feeling and movement and things like that, so that I can feel. So for me, I'm fantasizing in a way, I guess you could say, about healing and to get to a place. You know, it's kind of a fuck you, no pun intended, pun intended. Fuck me, I guess.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned that because I also want to put in that for a lot of, for example, I'm saying from experience, for a lot of trans people, using fantasy to kind of imagine having sex or being in a sexual situation, at times, again, as a gender fluid person, with a body that I can't have access to in reality at that time. And I use fantasy to, like you were saying, almost dissociate
Mhm.
because connecting with my body in that way that the reality is offering me isn't what I want.
Mm, mm,
So, by all means, fantasy can be used for connection or disconnection. It's just a matter of being mindful about,
yeah,
like you were saying, why is this happening? Do I want to do something about it? Or am I happy just going to keep it as is?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Hmm. And like we were thinking about like accessing fantasy, the ways in which we access fantasies are a variety of ways, of course, and it's like um writing, and we talked about writing in our second series, and we can do that through film, and we can do that through multimedia. We can do that, and of course, visually. There's so many ways to realizing those fantasies, and then of course, there are many ways that we have roadblocks to those fantasies. We've already mentioned, like many taboos and thinking about good and bad and assumptions that are tied to those fantasies.
Mhm.
Because I know that I definitely have privilege when it comes to sharing my fantasies, because as a sex educator, I talk about sex all the time. And even in that, when I tell people about what my jam is, I still have a little fear inside of me when I tell them this is the thing that I love sexually, right? I wait for it to see. Are they gonna think I'm a weirdo? Are they gonna think this? Are they gonna think, um, and even still, when they're in it with me, when, if we break up, if we no longer see each other, when we're done, are they gonna talk about that later? Are they gonna, you know? So that there's a lot of vulnerability in sharing those fantasies, right? Because you got to be ready. Are you really going to share that full self? So there's a lot there. Fantasies are very vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we will talk more about getting validation around our fantasies can be really helpful. Same with desire, right? It's like when you
Yes.
share, you're opening yourself up to someone being like, that's what you're into.
Yes.
Or someone saying, oh my gosh, I'm into that too. Like, you know, so there's absolutely the two sides. But moving from fantasy, step ahead would be fantasies that maybe have the potential to be realized.
Hmm.
And that's where we get into the territory of role play, of making fantasies.
Love it.
That's your favorite. Yeah, making our fantasies into reality.
Yes. This is like my favoriteest thing ever. I love, love, love role playing. It's just the best. It really does. It's just like the thing that gives us so much permission to just have fun and be creative and just do things that we're afraid of, wouldn't otherwise do, are curious about. Um, it's fun and it gives us this container in which to do it in, right? Whether it's for 10 minutes, an hour a day, if you try it once in your life or you are an avid role player, it's a wonderful experience, in my opinion. So I looked up the definition on Wikipedia, and they have this definition for sexual role play. But Aredvi and I talked, and definitely there are differences between sexual role play, and then there's erotic role play, romantic role play, like sort of non-sexual role playing. So we want to emphasize that there's lots of different kinds of ways that you can role play. And so sexual role play is role play that has a strong erotic element. Um, it may involve two or more people who act out roles in a sexual fantasy and may be a form of foreplay and be sexually arousing. Many people regard sexual role play as a means of overcoming sexual inhibitions, just like we talked about. It may take place in the real world or via an internet forum, chat room, video game, or email, allowing for physical or virtual impossible erotic interest to be enacted. So basically what we're saying, so we can do this in real life, which I love, but of course, in this quarantine pandemic, we are doing it in all the other ways, so that we can get our groove on while we are experiencing all of this. Um, so role playing really offers us some fun, creative stuff to not only experience sex, which can be incorporated into that, but it really digging into that inner child too. It always goes back to curiosity for me, because I think we forget about that curiosity. Curiosity is just so much fun, and we forget that piece. So that's where role play lies for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like then talking about desire, role plays that we desire, we get to
Hmm.
explore. Then there is role playing when a partner desires something,
Hmm.
and we're playing a role for them, right?
Right.
That's fun. And then role play where it's a limited time thing. We are taking on a role knowing that this is just something either for fun or a part of us versus role play as a lifestyle. where we might just assume a role 24/7 and identify with that role as who we are or part of who we are, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so there are certain, and so just to elaborate on that, like for instance, some people might say, I role play um, a dominatrix, and I like to play with power with my partner. Um, I role play being a master or something like that, right? But there might be people, which I'm like one of those people that I live in the BDSM lifestyle, right? So that's a part of my life, right? So I don't play a role that's like a part of my life, right? So there's like the ends of or parts of a circular sphere, probably you can say that. So there are differences, identity and a role in that. Just
Mm-hmm.
like when you mentioned a Redby, like there's gender play and then there's gender identity, right? Exactly.
And sometimes there's overlap too, right? Like
Yeah.
you might be a sex worker who also enjoys sex worker role play stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it might be different or similar from the kind of work you're doing.
Exactly.
So there's absolutely areas where there's overlap between lifestyle, identity, and desire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what would be, let's talk about some common role play scenes, scenarios that we know of or hear a lot.
The most common, I mean, very basic ones are like boss and their employee, doctor, nurse, things like that. And interrogation scene. That's a little higher up, but that's an interrogation scene. A photographer and a model. Um, did I say teacher student?
I don't think so, but yeah, that's.
Babysitter, and one of the parents or something, or the babysitter and the kid, depending if it's age play. So those are kind of cheerleader and the jock, kind of those things. And the kind of common theme in a lot of role plays are a power dynamic. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's BDSM, but there is one person that has a little more power than the other one. So that's pretty much a common theme in a lot, not all, but a lot of
Yeah.
plays, which speaks volumes.
There's power. Everything comes down to
Yes.
power, right?
Yes.
And some of these roles are very taboo too, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of the, I don't know, like daddy little girl, a lot
Yeah.
of the incest play stuff can be very taboo,
Mm-hmm.
which is also, where the fun is for a lot of people. And yeah, and we will be talking more about how power play shows up in role play very specifically, because that's a big topic.
Yes.
So definitely join us for the next session where we expand on it. But for now, we're just going to talk a little bit more about what makes a successful role play, and doesn't have to be strong in power play, but just in general.
Yeah, I think that for sure you have to have, like some sort of enthusiasm or consent. Like you don't want to be made to do something. If you're not into role playing and that's not your cup of tea, then you probably shouldn't do it, you know, um, because you really want to have some fun doing it, or at least be into it to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you have to at least want to have some thought into it, right? Communicate. For some people, they really want to have an in-depth conversation about what this role play is going to be about. That's some people really like that, right? And then for others, they want a really bare bones kind of discussion. They want this is the scenario, this is the safe word, this is the kind of sex I want to have. That's pretty much it, and then we'll flow from there. So you kind of get the flow, you kind of decide what it is um, how you want to flow, and then it goes from there. But if you want to get more information, that's fine. So communication is key, and you get to figure that out, how you want to do it. Down and dirty, detailed. Creativity is really important as well, um, because you really don't need a lot of props in order to do role playing. You can be really creative with your mind. And I want to give an example. I think once I did a role play with someone where it was okay, this is going to be funny, but I did a role play once where I did a, uh, I was a pirate ship and I was doing a gangbang on this woman that we took. And really, it was just myself and this woman. So I was supposed to create a gangbang for this woman. So I had her on the bed, and I literally lined up these different pairs of shoes in different weight, and tied her eyes up, to blindfolded her, and kept opening and shutting the door, putting on different shoes and making different sounds, coming in and out, changing my voice. And every time I would fuck her and then come to ejaculate, I had a warm thing of lotion that I had, and I would have the lotion fall onto her as I like ejaculate. I mean, I whole fantastic wait.
You just froze, so we'll wait for your connection to come back. What a fantastic story to lose you in the middle of. Let's see. Well, I think the gods of internet are unhappy today. All right. Well, while Ignacio joins us, I'll just cover some of the other material, but we'll definitely want to hear the rest of that story. So um, the one of the also important things about role play, as it is with all kind of sexual interactions, would be talking about safety and how that's going to go. So that's anything from deciding if you're going to say things like no or stop, would that work for the scene, or you're going to use a safe word, and use another method. Like a common method is using the green, yellow, red. So if you like something, you say green. If something is so-so, you say yellow. And if you just want something to stop, you can say red. So having a conversation about basic safety stuff is really important. Also deciding what the triggers are, what soft limits there are, what hard limits there are, and especially for a role play scene, figuring out when is it going to end? Is it going to end after a certain time? Is it going to end after a certain act? Or we're just going to decide, like, when I do this thing, that's the end of the scene. Or having a word for the end of the scene. So it's not a safe word, but it's an end of the scene word. And also, this might show up less for digital role play, but it's always good to think about what would happen in case of emergency. So if you're doing something involved, just figuring out if things go wrong and a person is in a vulnerable position, what would be a good, quick way to get out of that? Like, digitally speaking, if you are telling someone to get in a certain position or use certain devices to be restrained, just be mindful of the surroundings, the environment, and how that's going to play out in case something goes wrong. So those are the safety stuff. And we're still waiting on Ignacio to join us, because I can't wait to hear how that ended. Let's see. Okay. Um, yeah, and I guess what I would say, the only other thing I would add to what Ignacio said around elements of a successful role play is really figuring out that consent piece, and that understanding what it feels like to not be into something. Sometimes with fantasies that we're trying to make them come into reality, they can feel different, very different from how we thought they would go. So understanding where our limits are and knowing that, okay, this isn't going the way I thought it was going to go, and I'm going to know where my boundaries are and when I need to stop this, or maybe just pause, rethink, change some things, and go forward. I know there's a lot of excitement that can come up around role playing and fantasies, and sometimes I just want to go along with something because we're excited, or a partner we have is really excited about it. But it's just really good to check in and be connected to how it feels when something isn't going right for us. Um, yeah. All right. Let's. I'm gonna check on Ignacio. I feel like they may have lost their connections, or someone is asking what words are a no. Yeah. So around safety, that's one thing that can come with more familiar role play. If you're playing with someone you're familiar with, is that you can kind of develop also a sense for when they look like they're not really into something, they've lost the scene, and it's a good time to maybe pause and check in, even if they may have not said a safe word, even if they may have not said no or stop. And also, there are scenarios in which the words no and stop are part of the scene, right? So you might be hearing that a lot and are intentionally ignoring them, and then distinguishing that scenario from other sexual play or non-sexual play, where no and stop do mean no and stop, in fact. All right. Well, we have more to go over around digital role play for you. Plus Ignacio's story. But while we wait for Ignacio to join us, I am going to go into our next part about anonymity and just cover some material. But we'll go back to finish up the role play stuff once Ignacio gets here. Oh, great. Perfect timing. Hello?
Yes.
Oh, there you
Yes.
are. Great.
Did everybody get lost? It was just me.
It was just you, but
Okay.
yeah, it was just in the middle of your story. While you were gone, I just went over some of the safety stuff and kind of finished off the other material. So we want to hear how your story ended.
Okay. I was like, God damn it! What was I saying?
Actually, okay, Rodney is back, I think, or we have Felice back now.
All right. Like my little.
Sorry.
Messed up.
Okay, great. So, yes, so you were telling us about being on a ship and the gangbang story.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so I was like throwing warm lotion as ejaculation, and I was putting different weights onto this person. So, like, much heavier weight. I mean, I was being very creative about I did this fake ass gangbang for this person. So that was in person role playing.
Mhm.
But then I'm thinking about what kind of role playing you do, when you are doing it over the interwebs. And I've been like really having fun thinking about what that could look like, the creativity of role playing online. So yeah, my creative juices are flowing with that. Because in person, I mean, I get in. I get in with the ideas. I'm like, ooh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I there's a lot of interesting digital role play scenarios also that are exclusively digital. I mean, you could transfer like a teacher student scene into,
Oh
a
yes.
digital role play, but like something like, um, give me an example of a digitally exclusive role play.
Um. Oh, like we were talking about before. Are we doing the
Yes.
okay, so it would be probably a role play where let's say you were in your house, right? You were in your house walking around, you had your computer open, and all of a sudden you look and there's some person's face on your computer. Somebody hacked into your camera computer thing, and now this person is telling you that that they have all your information. They have all your credit card information, social security, all of it. They have everything. Unless you do what they tell you to do, they will release all your video, films, all that stuff if you have incriminating shit on your hard drive.
Hmm.
And so part of that deal is that you have to do sexual things for them. And maybe this drags out. Maybe you have to meet them every month or every week and come in front of the camera and do all the things they tell you to do, or else
Yeah, that's
to get
fantastic. That's a great one. And actually, we decided to do act out the negotiation for a scene like this. So for this part, I'm gonna have Felice join us, and Felice is under me. So Felice will be interpreting for me, and Rodney will be interpreting for Ignacio as we act out the negotiation part for this scene.
so I've been really thinking about a negotiation. I mean, a role play that I would like to do with you while we have been in quarantine, because we haven't had any skin to skin contact, and I would love to enhance our play. So have you ever done role playing before?
I've tried a little bit of role playing, but I am new to anything digital. So I would want to really hear how this is going to work out.
Okay. So I've dabbled with it a little bit, but so what I'm thinking is, you have a computer, I have a computer, we can set it up. And what we do is, I'm thinking a role play about, you know, um, bribery, right? And so I bribe you to do sexual favors for me, which means I get to tell you to do things for me, put you in compromising positions, maybe take photos of you or something, and you must do these things for me. Maybe you might offer some pushback, and I have to make you do these things, threaten you, things of that nature. What do you think about that? How does that sound to you?
That's interesting. Would you be recording our sessions? Or I'm kind of thinking in terms of privacy and security. It sounds exciting, but
Mm,
it's definitely not something I'd want to,
yeah.
broadcast or have other people see.
Right, right. I mean, we don't have to record it. I mean, it would be fun to watch it afterwards, but we don't. We don't have to record it. And as far as like privacy, we could look. I think that there's some sites that are like encrypted and things like that that we can make sure that we're safe and stuff, so that nothing is out there. We can look into that together if you'd like, to make sure. But as far as the actual stuff, that I'm
Mhm.
thinking about in terms of bribery and things like that. What do you think? Is that something that turns you on, or is it not something that you like?
Honestly, I've never tried it, but I think you're very much into it. So that is exciting. And I do want to try it.
Okay.
But I really don't like to hear humiliating language.
Okay.
So if you think you can come up with a scenario where you don't use any humiliating language, especially like anything indicating that like, I'm stupid or some stuff like that.
Okay.
Because it's like a bribery scene and being hacked kind of makes you feel stupid.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
um, so yeah, that would be one thing for me.
Okay. What if you were like this, really rich person or something, and it's more about you being rich? It's about your
Mm.
money. It's about your money. So not being stupid, but just rich.
Yeah, that would be a great fantasy to begin with.
So there you go. You have all this money, right? Okay. Is there anything that you wouldn't want me to ask you to do? Like, um, is there something that's off limits? If because I'm thinking about particular things that I would ask you to do, but if
Mm.
is there anything off limits?
I think I'm comfortable with everything, but I don't want to be made to orgasm. It might happen, it might not. So I don't want to get stuck if I'm not feeling like that's
Okay.
something I want to do.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. And if I tend to like scenes to kind of like end naturally, but let's say that the scene can end when I end it, when I say I'll see you next week.
Mm.
So when I say that it's over, like when I think that it's an ending, so you don't have to end it, and there's no orgasm to end it or anything like that. Um, and sometimes when people get into role plays, they don't like to do it really long. So maybe for the first time, let's try to do this like let's try for 20 minutes and see how that feels. And then we can check in and then see how that makes us feel and try next time for a little longer if it feels okay. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that sounds good. I like that. I like not having a pressure to keep going with something
Okay.
new. And I think my safe word is watermelon. So
Okay.
um, I'm gonna say that if something comes up. I think I might say things like, why are you doing this? This is horrible. Please stop blackmailing me. Please
Hmm.
stop making me do these things. But those are going to be part of the play. So
Okay.
unless I say watermelon, you can keep going.
Okay. And I want to be, I'm going to be mean, like shut up and things like that. Is that okay with you? Aggressiveness. Like I want to be aggressive, but not, I'm not going to use words like stupid or demeaning words, but like very aggressive.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Aggressive is fine as long as it's not humiliating. Very specifically, yeah, around
Okay.
that words.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. There you
Um,
have it. And that's literally how I negotiate. Like for
yeah,
real.
yeah. So like the openness around just talking. Um, I think the hardest part for a lot of people is knowing what it is that works for them and what doesn't, and it's okay to not know everything.
Hmm.
Sometimes you just have to try and explore to really have answers to a lot of these kind of questions and knowing your boundaries and limits. So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think sometimes too, once we get into a role play, maybe in the middle of it, it doesn't feel right and you don't like it. That's why the safe word is there. And I think sometimes we feel weird because, oh, snap, we're in it. I don't want to fuck it up. I don't want to. You can. That's why a safe word is there. Say watermelon. You know what? Don't like it. Sorry. It's okay. It's okay because a lot of times when we don't say the safe word, when we don't say stop, when we don't, you know, we end up just screwing ourselves,
Mhm.
because then later on, we get angry at ourselves because we didn't speak up, you
Yeah.
know. And as a survivor or a person surviving, you know, like CSA and rape, it's just not a good place to be in, when you afterwards you thinking like, damn, I should have said this, I should have said that, I feel bad because I didn't. It's just
Mhm.
better to say no then, and maybe feel a little uncomfortable in the moment.
Mhm.
It's okay to say watermelon, or that feels funny, or I think I want to stop right now and maybe try later, or it's not my jam. I thought it would be, but it's not. I think it'll stay up here, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just about to go into anonymity and cover some stuff while we were waiting for you, but you came back at the perfect time. So I would love to just talk a little bit about how digital role play and fantasy can show up within that realm, because
Mhm.
oftentimes we're considering it with someone we know or we've played with before, or we can trust a lot. um, yeah, so what is anonymity and what does that indicate to you?
Mm. So when I was looking up like anonymity, it's like nameless, faceless, you know, and then it also says mistrust, danger, you know, stuff around privacy. Um, and so many things came up for me around anonymity, you know, because I think for people at first, it's like this, it is around the mistrust and danger. It's like, how, mostly it's like, um, I think about people that say, oh, I could never be with someone that I don't know. I
Mhm.
need to know people, I need to love people, I need to have a heart connection, I need to, which is all good and does nothing against that at all. But what I tend to find is that sometimes those people have it's a judgment, about people who don't need a heart connection, love, or anything, because I absolutely do not need a heart connection or anything, because I can't have sex with anyone without having a heart connection. Um, and that doesn't make me a horrible person, a bad person, or anything. But there's this kind of conflation of that. Like if you have anonymous sex, or if you have anonymous play with someone, that there's something off about you or wrong about you, or there's a defect because there's no connection, which I say is actually incorrect. I think there is connection in anonymity. I really do think there is connection in anonymity. Um, it's just a different kind of
Mhm.
connection. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There is kind of that hierarchy of good sex, good, fulfilling, pleasurable sex
Hmm.
happens with familiarity and with familiar partners. And the longer you know them, the better it's going to be. And I think a lot of people who've had experience with long-term relationships know that is not necessarily true.
Right.
And that's all the way to the less you know someone, then the worse your sex can be, right?
Hmm.
Unless you are a weirdo who's specifically into a stranger's sex, that just you know which is even if that is your thing, like anonymity by itself is turning you on, that's
Hmm.
one part of the conversation. But
Right.
then the other part of it is that you can have a great connection with an anonymous person, right?
Hmm.
And you
Yes.
can't do that because you allow yourself to explore parts of yourself that may not be accessible to you for whatever reason
Yes.
when you are with
Yes.
familiar partners.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I was just was telling you the story of one of the best anonymous sex dates I had. I actually went to a play party in Brooklyn. God, I don't even know, 20 some odd years ago or something. I don't know, maybe no, maybe it's 15, 17, I don't even know. But I went to this play party, and there was really nobody there that I was interested in playing it with. So I kind of like sat around and just waited to see. And this person came in, this person of color came in, and they were very attractive. Um, and they kind of sat next to me and was trying to talk to me. And one of the first things I asked them was how old they were. And they were a little younger than me. So I was just like, it's like, no, I'm sorry, and I kept on saying, no, 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 no. And they were very, very persistent in a very nice way, just like very adorable, very persistent. They were like, come on, age ain't nothing but a number, you know. And they were definitely of age. Okay, I'm saying that they were definitely a good age, but I was just making a call and saying that. And then finally, I was definitely horny, and I was just like, I'm at a play party. I'm like, okay. I was like, but I don't want to be here. I was like, you got a place? They said yes. And I really, we didn't introduce ourselves. Didn't know this person, never seen them before in my life. Um, we took a cab, went to their place, had some extremely fucking raw, good, animalistic sex. Um, Took a shower, got dressed, left. I never saw this person. Maybe 3 years later at Gay Pride, I was hanging out and I saw this person walking by. They saw me, I saw them. We gave a nod, and that was that. I was so hot because we didn't talk to each other. We didn't say anything to each other. That's what made it even hotter because it wasn't like, hey, what's up? I was like, no, I don't want to know you. You don't want to know me. We just had a one night of fucking awesome sex. That was it. And that was that. you know, it was just, it was just like this unwritten thing. And we were also talking about this thing about this other side, this accessibility side of anonymity, because I keep thinking about all the people that use, all the people that have and will continue to use anonymity for connection, for their mental health, to live, to express, to feel something. Many trans people, gay men, people who don't have that it's illegal to express any kind of love. Um, Anonymity is the only way to
Mhm.
to be that. So um, that is, an important thing to have, that secrecy, in order um, to have that mental health, to survive in this fucking world that is very, very oppressive.
Mhm.
Right. So that's the oppressive side of stuff. I'm going to be anonymous because I'm oppressed. And then there's an anonymity for the excitement of it all. I just want to be anonymous to be completely exciting. So there's a lot of different ways for anonymity to, be accessed. Um, uh,
Yeah, absolutely. I think about anonymity as, like you said, a response to sexual oppression when ex- expressing ourselves sexually is limited in so many different ways, right?
mm-hmm.
Like from employment, if you put yourself out there in any way as having a sexual interest, an employer could find out, your friends and family can
Right.
find out. And in most parts of the world, including the United States, being open about your sexual desires could potentially get you in legal trouble. So anonymity is in a way a remedy, a response to sexual oppression
Mm-hmm.
for sexual expression. And digital anonymity itself, I see that because of all of this, as a safety path, a way that I can have my privacy, explore sexually, and kind of feel okay. And I say this as someone who has had the experience of, as an immigrant and queer trans person, for so many years, fearing what would happen to me
Right.
to be open about my sexual desire, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
You talked a little bit before about like the difference between anonymity online as anonymity on in person, right? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
I think so. There's different in terms of risk and safety. There's different things we want to consider. In person, a stranger, you might want to think about, well, the kind of harm they can do potentially is very different from the kind of harm someone can do online to you. So thinking about those differences and preparing for them. For example, in digital platforms, you don't want to be giving people your personal information. And we talked about privacy, security stuff in the first session. So if you want to engage in digital anonymous sex with someone, you probably want to use a platform like Kik, K-I-K, where you create a username, share that username with someone else, and then you can use a platform to exchange text, video, or pictures, never have to share your personal information, and you can delete everything afterwards. So thinking about the risk factors that can come with anonymity, as much as there's potential and excitement as well, right? And just planning ahead for how you're going to protect yourself if you're engaging in digital anonymous sexual or other kinds of connection.
Yeah. Going back to like the oppression piece, I do want to mention too, in terms of the anonymity, because we mentioned it before, the flagging piece, because you hadn't heard about that. And I was like, you hadn't heard about flagging. And I was like, flagging is fantastic, right? Oh, I love the gay culture, right? Because it's like anonymity, right? There's anonymity, but then there's this code that goes with it. It's like the hanky code. Got your handkerchiefs on either the right or the left side of your pocket to indicate whether the top or the bottom, and each color indicates what you're into. So you can just be walking somewhere, you give a look, you got your color, you don't have to say shit. That is the negotiation. It's like, I'm into fisting, I'm into kink, I'm into piss play, I'm into everything, I'm into whatever, and I'm the top of this, or I am looking for someone to do this for me, to me. I love it. It's just like, for someone like me who likes things very direct and very clear, it's like, oh, that's very like, yeah, that's it. That's what I like. Thank you. There it is. Let's go. Let's just find where we're doing it. So that feels so clear to me. And then for others, it's like, we need to have a detailed conversation, and that's good. You need to know what works for you, and you can have a variation of those things, right? And how that's going to look, online. I also think about the glory holes as well. That's also anonymity as well. It's like you're putting a part of your body inside of a hole somewhere, and bam, there you go, having some good old time. You don't know who's on the other end of it, kind of the same with the foot tapping in public bathrooms, right? It's like going into a bathroom, you tap your foot, somebody's in the other stall. That's a message. All right. You don't know who's there. That's excitement, anonymity, right?
Absolutely. And translating all of that nowadays into the digital world, right? Yeah, I mean, you have to be really clear as to where your boundaries are and what it is you're looking for, when you need to step away or disconnect from someone, because you won't be having all the time to negotiate an elaborate scene. You kind of, are either test driving a fantasy you had, or trying to make a connection, a quick connection, which is also, I think, another potential thing digital role playing can offer, anonymous digital role play, is that you can kind of show up to anonymous digital connection in your role. So if you're trying to explore something, you can show up as, depending on what the role is. So like, if the role is fantastical, like you want to be an alien or something like that, you probably want to give someone heads up. But for example, you can show up as a daddy, just, as a daddy dom. Maybe that's not what you're really doing otherwise. Or you might want to just show up as a little girl, regardless of what your gender, sexuality, interests are. And I think that's the beauty of that kind of anonymity, digital anonymity, is that you can explore so much around your fantasies that for whatever reason can be much more limited in real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we are getting to the part of getting closing so we get some questions, right?
Yes. So before we get into questions, and as you think about them and write them for us, I just wanted to say that our next session, last session of the series, will be virtual power play in the age of digital sex. And we're going to go more deeply into how power play looks like when cyber fucking. And once again, thank you everybody who has donated. Please consider donating to the Heal Project for the webinars so we can bring more of them to you. And we are planning on doing community coaching for our fans and folks who have more questions. So there's a survey on our social media and website that you can fill out to help us plan better.
Yes, yes, yes. And when we're thinking about fantasy and role playing and anonymity, they can all like intersect. And so they all, if we have circles, they're all little points that can all bleed into one another. We can use our fantasies to become reality into role play. We can use our role playing to be anonymous, and so forth and so on. So we can all play with those things and really have fun with those things. I mean, really have fun and be creative. I think that's the curiosity piece that I keep telling people about. It's like we fall into these mundane things about how to spice up, and it's like, let's live in the curiosity and the creativity right here in the role play.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like role playing has so much to offer in expanding our desire, that I really hope folks get to try it out a little bit. I'm looking at the questions. We have a lot of wonderful chats coming up, so
Okay.
I'm gonna take a little to read over it. Oh, we have a question. When disassociating into fantasy, when receiving certain sex acts, do you share that with your partner?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Yeah, it really does depend on my connection with that partner, or if I even want to go into it, because sometimes it takes too much time to even go there. And sometimes it's about, yeah, sometimes it's about the look or the pity of the partner when you talk about the things. So sometimes I just don't want to go there. It's about my own process of it. So it's internal most times. Yeah, it's my own internal healing thing. So I know what I have to think about, and it doesn't take away from the experience at all, because I'm really enjoying what's happening, and that's enhancing the enjoyment. I just need that extra little thing that I got to do so that I can be there. Yeah.
Yeah, and they share that they're often negotiating how much to share about their trauma story with people. And they want to communicate clearly about their needs and boundaries, but also don't want to share the whole trauma story. Like you were saying, it's those stories, those thoughts, those fantasies are ours, and we get to decide when and how we share them with other people. And sometimes it's just like the mood, like you were saying. It's that feels right to share right now and doesn't in other times. In no ways, these are all personal things. Also, I should say that you have to really answer for yourself what feels comfortable for you. But there is no, I don't think there's an ethical issue. Personally, that's how I view it. Around holding your thoughts and fantasies and traumas and stories to yourself, to whatever level you see is appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. And also, one thing that I say to many people who are surviving is, I can't stress this enough. I think that having, sibling survivors, that I call them, your friends, your chosen family who are other survivors, I can't stress enough how important that is. Just other people that you can talk to, because it's good to have other people that you don't have to explain things to, that get you, that you can talk about, you know, the craziness that comes up for us. It's really good to have that. So try to have, if you can, if you have that privilege, to have other people with you to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say on the flip side of that also, be mindful of the questions you're asking people about their thoughts and fantasies. And as you're asking them, if you're sensing resistance or, you know, unwillingness to share, to stop asking and probing.
Yes.
You know, and I think this can happen when you feel like you're very intimate and connected with someone, maybe a romantic partner, that we start to feel like, oh, they need to be open and honest with me all the time about everything that's happened to them. No, they don't.
No.
They don't. And it
No.
doesn't mean they don't love you, or it doesn't mean they're trying to hide from you. It doesn't mean any of that.
Yeah. We get to keep them. We get to keep some things. Yes.
Yeah, so let's see. We are getting close to time. If there is any other questions.
Okay. Some people sharing some fantasies that sound fun. Thank y'all. Being a cam girl. Yes.
Someone pointed out, I think, as part of negotiation to discuss what you want body parts to be called. I think thank you for bringing that. That's very important.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, what words to use, what words not to use. Also around safety, what safety words to use. So, yeah.
Somebody said, I like to fantasize about anonymous sex, but have it with someone I trust. And that makes sense. That's the role play right there. I want to role play having anonymous sex, right? So you're role playing that you don't know this person. That's great.
Yeah, I really love the example of the gangbang ship that you brought, because it shows, you might think if there's a gangbang fantasy, you have to have a group of people to make it happen. But it's like you can really get creative.
Yes, yeah.
And this is the beauty of imagination and fantasy on what it can offer, right? All right. Oh, one last thing I was going to say about anonymous connections is validation.
Oh. Do tell more.
Well, in two sense, I guess, like in my experience, part of it has been, I feel like a lot of people really deal with body image issues. And as someone who really came from, struggling quite a bit with body image issues, and then being in queer circles, and there is this thing of, you don't kind of get stuck on the body or kind of talk much about the body because you don't want to be objectifying, right? This is the feminist narrative. We don't talk about the bodies. Right. So when I remember when I first joined dating apps, getting compliments from straight cishet dudes about my body and my looks was such a novel new thing. And I'm like, thank you very much. I'd love this. I love to be getting validation about my body from complete strangers. This is wonderful. But it was also, I was controlling how I was putting myself out there. I was controlling who I was, and then receiving validation specifically around that. So anyways, that was a little.
I like that.
Anyway, so we are at time, and thank you everybody who was able to join us today, and sorry about some technical difficulties.
Yes, sorry.
in case you missed some stuff, feel free to go back and watch the video on YouTube later on. We will be sending out the resource package probably tomorrow, the next day. So I'll email everyone once it's ready.
We got some good role play exercises in the resource packet and some ideas for how to hone in and, you know, develop your role play characters. I put that in there. Okay. So get it going and try to do it. I mean, what else are you doing right now while you're in quarantine? So get those characters going.
Yes. Thanks again to our interpreters for being so wonderful, and for everybody who joined us today.
Yes, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week for, sadly, our last one, but very excited for that one. Yeah, for now, yes.
All right, bye.
All right, bye, everyone.